really various situations. So then if that's the case, if he is in the extreme, if that's the intensity of the stressors, then we indicate that in the box under the extreme stress. Now, we will not be talking in detail about all the griefs because we would be here all day, but the scale has a criteria for each and every one of these griefs, and we follow the same pattern that we have gone through already. Very well. Evidently, we must have a questionnaire. At the beginning, I would say we really have to have that history that the immigrant has lived, all of the information and data that we have and that we are able to get through the scale. The scale will not be asking any odd or weird or out of the ordinary issues, only what we want to know about the individual to see how the individual is doing. Meaning that the questionnaire will not be asking any odd or out of the ordinary questions. We should have already a history, a personal history of the individual, and we have to know what are the difficulties and what illnesses. Otherwise, we will not be able to diagnose. Therefore, the questionnaire then helps us obtain information of each and every one of the griefs. But as I've said, I believe that this should be considered. And but we do the questionnaire to make sure that nothing has skipped, that we have gotten everything. It's not just a waste of time, you know. It's not like 2-3 hours trying to it's the basic information that we've obtained that we now are structuring in a scheme. It's not that we're looking into new materials or difficult ways. When the subject is under certain test or you know, it's not that way. We're not putting the subject under test, under questioning, really we should have the basic biography of the individual and personal history. So we structured this. I will comment briefly on these 4 factors that we see underneath the scale, under observations that the scale does not measure, but that we must take into account, because this is part of the reality that the immigrant lives. The scale cannot measure this because we cannot measure at the same time one thing and another. The scale only measures problems. We are looking for what are those negative stressors that he's going through. So what are the 4 elements that we have to get down under observations to understand the reality of the immigrant and where he is at risk? First of all, the observations are protective factors. We've spoken about problems, but the immigrant may also have certain personal qualities, for example, maturity, intelligence, or maybe social skills. All of that will help. Or he may belong to a group support that is providing him with that support religiously and politically. And that's very important. That does not mean that will resolve all of the problems that he has. If I have a debt with the bank and I owe money to the bank, you know, having a social group doesn't mean that they will solve my debt. So we are talking about problems, yes, that he's facing, but elements that protect. Yes, observations of protective factors, so he can then overcome the stressors. Under the scale, we would have to write down, well, these are the vulnerabilities, these are the stressors, but he also is part of a religious group, and this is very important for him. They provide support. We also take that into consideration, and we value that. Very well. Secondly, what we call aggravating factors. We must take into consideration that when we are measuring the stressors, meaning the problems that the immigrant is facing, we measure these according to, we measure this and we focus on the last 6 months. You know, we can't measure this forever. Therefore, the stressors, if he's sleeping on the streets, if he is alone, we look into his situation for the prior 6 months that he's lived. If he now has a better situation or relationship, but he's lived very extreme situations. So these aggravating factors are really the difficulties that the immigrant has experienced since he immigrated. From the day he left his home up to the 6 months prior to the visit, assessing the scale. So if the immigrant, there's an example of an immigrant who is now legal but was undocumented for a year ago, you know, he probably is not facing the same stressors, but we should take that into consideration. The scale also has observations of subjective factors. Yes, as I said, we have our theories, our scientific theories, and we see the subject from our point of view, but the subject can have a totally different interpretation of what he's going through. I've seen cases, a lot of people sometimes say, well, oh, I don't have my children with me, but that does not really worry me. According to our theory, that is something in which there's a concern, because I have all these theories backing me up that says that if a father is not close to his children, you know, there can be issues that arise, problems, concerns. I remember there was a case at the social service office. There was a man who was living on the streets, and I said, oh yeah, I live on the streets, but I enjoy it. You know, I'm perfectly fine on the streets. You know, he was perfectly fine with this sleeping and living in the streets, but according to our theories, that is not the case. So see, that's what we're trying to really interpret here. There's different issues that are seen according to our point of view and the subject's point of view. And then on the other hand, we also have the fourth observation, which is the cultural focus. Yes, the cultural focus. In the culture, there's everything. If you like the food from California, no, that's not where the culture is. The culture is the way that they live, their family life, etc. Does the culture then have a certain influence in the griefs that we are evaluating? For example, it's not the same. The family separations, or the family that is living in a clan or a group, or a single mother, a single father, the culture is really being influenced in the way that the individual is living the grief. And this is also something that is taken into account in the scale. Now we are going to talk about a case, analysis of a case, and so we will try to measure this in a more specific way with all of the dialogue of what we've said. For example, there was a man, Juan, a 28-year-old man who left Ecuador. He was healthy. He was a strong person. He had no mental illness, and he was a very valued person in his community. And he had been in Spain for 2 years. But his symptoms were sadness and crying anxiety, recurring thoughts, headaches, insomnia. But he was someone who was working, had no ideas of death, no apathy. So we put aside the symptoms, and we have the scale there. And he left behind 2 children, aged 6 and 4, who he cannot see, and he has not seen in a long time. He cannot bring them to Spain because they do not have legal documentation. The family rupture. He has no legal documentation. He works when he can in an irregular manner in construction, in a very, very clandestine and very dangerous job. He continually changes his lodgings. He sees no solutions to his situation. Sometimes he's having to live on the streets, and he can hardly send any money back to his family. He's had a large debt as a consequence of his without any protection in a very hard job, dangerous job. And he was also detained several times because he has no documentation, and he no longer can go back to Spain because he has a large debt that he can no longer pay. So if he goes back to his country, he is faced with this large debt. So he's living under very big stressors or stress. So this is very in alignment with the Ulysses syndrome. He has such magnitude of problems, even though he's working, but he's sad. It's not that he's depressive. He has a certain activity, dreams, projects. He has no idea of death. It's not a depressive patient. So how is it that we apply the scale? Well, the vulnerability, we consider that it's a simple vulnerability in the 7 griefs. He can immigrate anywhere he wants. He's healthy, he's strong, with background of having the ability. Like we said, the humankind history is of successful migrations. We are capable. We have the ability of migrating. We've seen so many people who have been successful, but who now face these large barriers and walls. So the vulnerability, in his case, we consider that it's a simple vulnerability because language, culture, work, and family area, he is able to overcome this in a healthy way. He is not at high risk, and he should not have difficulties. But Juan has these barriers that are considered the stressors, extreme stressors in the family life, because he is separated from his family, from his young children. He has not seen them in a long time and will not see him for quite a while. So those are the extreme stressors in the family field. Now in the language barrier, well, he speaks Spanish and he would not have issues because it's the same language of the country of Spain. But if he immigrated to California, then he would have a language barrier because he would have to learn all of the new language that's spoken here. And in regards to the cultural area, there is an extreme stressors because one cannot communicate with the natives, with the locals, or just sing or be part of the society because he is undocumented. He can be expelled. He hides, or he can be deported. So we see extreme stressors also in regards to the land. There are simple stressors when they immigrate to terrible places. For example, if someone is immigrating to a country where it is an extreme winter weather, which is dark and cold, so obviously then you would have to face a very difficult situation psychologically. But when you immigrate from your land to a country where you have no issues with living there because of the weather, it's a welcoming as a place. So in regards to social status, we would have extreme stressors because he is undocumented. He cannot find a job in good conditions. He cannot find a housing. All of those are extreme stressors. And in regards to the group here, he has not lived situations of, if he has lived explicit situations, he could have slept on the streets and a group of individuals beat me, then that would be a very extreme stressor under the peer group. And also the physical risk because he was detained, no personal protection, helpless, works under very dangerous situations, has fallen, has had accidents at work, has threats of being taking its life. So those are extreme stressors. So we have the scale here. Green is a symbol. Yellow, complicated, and red